The squall arrived earlier than the barometer had warned, rolling across the North Atlantic like a bruise spreading on the horizon. Elias Gray, lately retired keeper of Wayward Light, felt the familiar tug of weather in his bones long before the first raindrop struck the salt-bleached railing. Though the Maritime Authority had decommissioned the lighthouse 3 years ago, and though the contract that once tied him to the tower had frayed, habit still guided him up the spiral stairs each evening. If the beacon no longer shone for ships, it still burned in his heart. Routine, he believed, was a kind of compass that kept loneliness from drifting into despair. That night, thunder answered the ocean's roar. Waves heaved against the cliff so violently that the single-pane windows in Elias's cottage rattled like loose teeth. He set a kettle on the iron stove, imagining the steam as a small, defiant lighthouse of its own, warming the dim kitchen. Then a noise cut through the squall, something between a cry and a muffled crash. At first, he dismissed it as another trick of wind funneling through fractured shale. But there it was again, a sharp human yelp swallowed by the gale. Elias pulled on his oilskin coat, seized a lantern, and stepped outside. The rain slashed sideways, needling his cheeks, but curiosity outweighed caution. He followed the sound past the tool shed and toward the cove where, decades earlier, a supply boat had anchored once a month. At the cove's edge lay a dinghy no larger than a rowboat, half-swamped, its rope snagged on a jagged rock. Huddled beside it was a figure in a drenched hoodie, arms wrapped around trembling knees. Lantern light revealed a face so young, Elias felt both protective instinct and aching nostalgia flare at once. "Easy now," he called over the wind. "No harm here." The teenager's eyes widened, gray like dawn fog, and in them, Elias saw fierceness tangled with terror. The kid tried to rise, faltered, then clutched a side stitch. "Storm caught you out," Elias said gently. "Let's get indoors before it worsens." The teenager looked toward the ragged mainland coast, invisible beyond curtain-thick rain. Then, with reluctant nod, accepted Elias's outstretched hand. Inside, the cottage steam welcomed them, mingling with chimney smoke. Elias piled blankets around his guest, poured tea sweetened with surplus condensed milk, and waited. Long ago, he'd learned that silence could be as inviting as speech. "Name's Elias," he said at last. "You?" The kid hesitated. "Sky," came the reply, voice raw. "Skylar, really. Sky it is. Storm found you, Sky. But I reckon you found me first. Care to say how?" Sky stared into the mug. "Saw the island on a nautical chart at the library." A shrug. "Figured no one lived here anymore. Needed somewhere out of reach." Elias raised a brow. "Runaway?" "Yeah," Sky exhaled. "From Baltimore. Bus, then ride share, then hitched a lift with a fisherman who never asked questions." Elias whistled low. "That's near 300 miles. 14 hours and my last $40, Sky said. "I thought..." The words thinned, replaced by a bitter laugh. "Doesn't matter." Elias studied bruises peeking above the hoodie's collar, old, yellowing, then noticed the cheap phone tucked in the pocket, powered off. Past filled in like tide-pushing beach. Fear, neglect, maybe fists. He knew the pattern. He'd once lived a version of it with an alcoholic father on a Nova Scotia trawler. Still, he did not pry. Outside, lightning stitched the clouds. Inside, the kettle's hiss softened to rhythmic purr. Finally, Elias said, "Storm's set to rage through morning. The spare bedroom's yours tonight. We'll speak of plans when daylight's calmer." Sky nodded, but did not meet his gaze. Later, as Elias banked the stove, he wondered whether the kid would slip away before dawn, but fatigue and weather kept Sky anchored. By breakfast, the tempest had spent itself, leaving a sky scrubbed clean and water glittering like new coins. While frying salt pork, Elias sent Sky hovering in the doorway, wide-eyed at the simple domesticity. "Eat," Elias urged. "Body's a ship. Without fuel, she flounders." Hunger rustled down distrust. Sky devoured the plate, then asked, "Why are you still here if the lighthouse is closed?" Elias chuckled. "Because the island's in my marrow. 35 years I tended that lantern. Retirement papers can't chase me off." Sky's gaze flicked toward the tower looming behind the cottage like a giant's candle. "Does it still work?" "More or less," Elias said. "Generator's temperamental. Lens needs polishing. Bureau stopped sending parts once shipping lane got rerouted. But I keep her heart beating, even if few witness it." "Can I see?" The question surprised them both. Elias sensed in that curiosity a lifeline, something bright peeking through the kid's storm cloud history. "Aye, After dishes, up the spiral they climbed, lantern in Elias's grip because the tower's wiring had long surrendered. Dust motes danced through sun shafts, penetrating cracked panes. At the gallery, glass segments of the Fresnel lens looked dulled, like a once grand eye filmed with cataracts. Crystal clear glass that bends light into a blade, Elias explained, running calloused fingers along prisms. She could punch her beam 20 nautical miles, sky traced soot-smudged ridges. Why bother now? Beacon's more than instrument. Elias said, It's promise. Sailors trust some spirit keeps vigil on these rocks. I suppose I can't let that promise die. Sky placed a hand against the metal housing, as if feeling faint pulse. Could we get it shining again? Elias searched the adolescent's face, hope tentatively, rekindling solder to skepticism. Coils corroded, bearings stiff. We'd need grit and patience. I have plenty of time, Sky murmured. And then let's put it to good use. Over the next week, they settled into rhythm. Each morning, Elias taught sky watching, how to read clouds' undersides for weather, how gannets angled differently when storm brewed. Afternoons were dedicated to restoration. Sky degreased gears, filed burrs, counted leftover bulbs. Elias rewired junction boxes with scavenged copper and filled logbook margins with diagrams. At dusk, they tested progress, a crank of generator, flicker of filament, cough of failure. Yet every night, the beam burned a minute longer, scattering gulls across violet waves. Evenings found them in the cottage, storm lamp aglow, telling stories. Elias wove legends learned from Portuguese whalers and Gaelic fishermen. The marrow who bargains for broken hearts. The phantom bark crewed by drowned sailors doomed to escort ships to safe harbor. Sky listened, chin on knees, until color returned to a face formerly drained. Then, one rain-lashed night, the teenager offered a tale of their own. My mom named me Skylark after the skylark, they said. She loved birds, said larks, sing even when rising straight against the wind. She died when I was 9. A pause like held breath. Stepdad moved in a year later. At first, he was okay, but then he'd drink. Made me feel like barnacles scraping his hull, voice quavered. Last week, he knocked me hard enough that stars popped. When he passed out, I ran. Elias felt rage flare, but his voice remained calm water. Abuse is a storm no child should navigate alone. He leaned forward, letting lamplight reveal the scar above his brow. My father could drink the Atlantic dry. I left at 16, joined a merchant crew, found home in the rhythm of waves. Took years to learn a man can drop anchor somewhere safe. Sky's shoulders eased. Tears did not fall, perhaps spent long ago, but relief pooled in their eyes. Is this island safe? It can be, Elias answered, but law expects missing miners returned. Coast Guard might patrol after that dinghy drifts ashore. We must decide before others do. Sky looked toward the black window, hearing wind moan in chimney. I'm not going back, they said quietly. I'd sooner drown. Elias considered. He had no legal guardianship, no kin except a niece in Boston who sent Christmas cards. But he also held a conviction that sometimes morality outranked regulation, and there was room in both cottage and heart. Then stay a while, he offered. As deckhand, apprentice keeper, whatever title suits, we'll contact authorities when you're ready. Sky's answer came not in words, but by fetching the lens cloth and resuming polish until the brass band gleamed like sunrise. Days passed under midsummer sun, broken by gull cries and the rhythmic creak of contact bearings loosening under lubricant. Elias noticed changes. Sky's laughter, tentative yet present, shoulders set straighter, appetite steadier. The kid asked questions, why algae glowed at night, why Elias never married, whether North Star truly stayed still. Had a sweetheart once, Elias admitted as they ate chowder thick with mussels Sky had harvested, named Marin. But my world circled this tower, hers circled city lights. Some orbits never align, he smiled without regret. Love still finds other courses. That evening, they sat on the gallery watching sunset bleed into water. Sky rested arms on railing, hair whipping. I used to think home was a building, a shrug, but buildings can betray you. Maybe home's just a person who keeps the light on. Elias swallowed emotion as potent as any storm. Aye, lad, he whispered. Or lass, whichever you prefer. Sky's lips twitched. Sky fits me fine. One mid-August night, with weather calm as pressed linen, they prepared for a full test. Generator thrummed steady, internal governor replaced with salvaged carburetor piece. Elias rotated the lens housing while Sky monitored voltage. At 21:07 hours, Elias closed the switch. Radiance exploded through the tower, slicing darkness in perfect revolutions. Beacon completed its longitudinal sweep, washed the sea in ghostlight silver. From the cove came faint applause of waves, as though audience reveling. Sky whooped, hugging Elias impetuously. For a breath, they were not runaway and retiree, but two souls made incandescent by shared triumph. Wayward light reborn, Elias said, voice thick. Never thought I could fix anything, Sky confessed. Not even myself. You're not broken, Elias replied, only unmoored. Now you've got charts. They kept the lamp ablaze 2 hours until fuel line sputtered. Still, the triumph endured, etched into memory like knot lines on mast. Yet fate, like weather, favors twists. Early September brought a Coast Guard cutter patrolling nearer than usual, its searchlight scanning waves. From high vantage point, Elias watched uniformed officers examine the abandoned dinghy newly washed ashore. Sky froze beside him. Full radio serial numbers, Sky whispered, panic rising. Trace rental, trace me. Elias weighed options. Hide, impossible, long-term. Surrender, unthinkable. Then intuition. That old mariner's friend murmured a third course. Storytelling, he said. What? Let me spin them a tale truer than fact, but kinder than bureaucracy. When the cutter's inflatable skiff pulled up at the cove, Elias met them, waving a weathered logbook. Ain't keep, the officer greeted, surprised. Didn't know anyone still stationed. Volunteer caretaker, Elias lied smoothly. Name's Gray. The officer gestured to the dinghy. Washed in. Possibly stolen. You seen occupants? Elias nodded gravely. A lad, 16, found him bruised and near drowned 2 weeks back. Said he'd fled abuse on mainland. I radioed authorities. He tapped the rusted old set on his belt. But storm interference must have swallowed signal. Lad was fevered. I did best to nurse him. Poor soul died 3 nights ago. Buried him yonder on high ground, marked with driftwood cross. Intended to sail to harbor tomorrow to report proper. Sky listened from behind a limestone outcrop, breath squeezed tight. Elias's words rang with such solemn conviction, even gulls fell silent. The officer's stern expression softened. That's unfortunate. You recall his name? Simply Sky, Elias said, meaning lingering on cusp of lie and truth. No surname offered? The officer removed cap, nodded respectful. I'll file casualty report. Sorry you had to bear that alone. Elias thanked them, heart pounding. Once the cutter departed, he found Sky seated on a boulder, face pallid. I'm a ghost now, Sky said shakily. Free ghost, Elias corrected, though sorrow pricked. But this island's remote, supplies thin, winter seas savage. To live here, we must adapt. Sky looked toward the lighthouse rising like marble flame. I want to stay, they said, as long as you'll have me. I can fish, mend nets, keep the log. Maybe one day I'll row to harbor with ID and courage new forgorged, but not yet. Then you'll be keeper in training, Elias said, placing calloused hand on their shoulder. Wayward Light's future. Weeks shortened. Daylight mellowed, tinted gold. They stocked coal, canned vegetables, patched roof. Elias taught Morse code, star navigation, rope splicing. He came to the tower, whitewashing over rust streaks, until it gleamed like tooth enamel against slate sky. Storm season returned with winter's herald. One night gale shrieked so fiercely that the lighthouse swayed perceptibly, joints groaning. Power flickered, generator coughed, then failed. In sudden darkness, chaos roared, shutters ripped, ladder toppled. Sky shouted, Elias answered, voice straining above wind, manual crank. Together, they ascended to lantern room. With flashlights clamped between teeth, they disengaged automatic gear, took opposite sides of capstan, and began turning. Muscles screamed, yet limbs spun. Outside, ocean fury demanded obedience. Within, 2 hearts beat in synchrony, driving Beacon's blade of salvation through storm. Several miles distant, a small freighter battling rogue seas glimpsed that sudden flare. Captain altered course, trusting ancient promise. Light means land, means safe passage. Dawn would reveal the vessel, nestled in lee of island, anchor secure, crew sending prayers skyward. Exhausted in tower, Elias and Sky collapsed against cool metal, laughter mingling with tears. Window panes rattled but held. Lantern reservoir glowed steady. unwavering. Home isn't walls, Sky gasped between breaths. It's hands on the crank, Elias finished, and Faith, you won't be left turning alone. After Storm's tantrum faded, crew of the freighter came ashore with crates of fresh fruit, chocolate, and a satellite radio as gratitude. News traveled. Wayward Light, thought retired, had guided them. Maritime Authority sent inquiry about reinstatement. But by then, the world inside the island had already expanded beyond official roles. On first calm day of spring, Elias and Sky painted new lettering above door, keepers, plural. Sky scrawled under, Elias is above. They stood back, smudged with white flecks. What if someone else washes up here? Sky asked. We'll put on kettle, Elias said. Story goes on. That evening, they watched horizon shift from blue to ember. Sky leaned against the older man, no longer runaway but rightful resident. Thank you, Sky murmured, for giving me Lighthouse heart. Elias smiled, feeling tide within settle on peaceful shore. Thank you for keeping the light with me. Night enveloped the island, but the beacon answered, sweeping steady arcs across dark water. Proof that even a storm-battered rock could kindle sanctuary, and that sometimes home arrived as unexpected hearts, learning to glow in tandem, defying waves and time alike.